Hello again, friends, and welcome to video episode 2 of our VCU Gerontology Community and Continuing Education's Compassion Fatigue mini-series. In our last video, we discussed how compassion fatigue is defined and how the answer to compassion fatigue may lie in our own compassion. But what does compassion fatigue really feel like? How can compassion fatigue show up in other people? To recognize compassion fatigue as an indicator that we need to make a change, we must recognize the signs and symptoms that we're experiencing compassion fatigue in the first place. And that is exactly what we are going to talk about today. Okay, so I have a challenge for you. Grab a pen and paper, and as I go through these signs and symptoms, I want you to draw a tally mark or a check for each symptom that you identify with. Okay. Pause the video if you need to, and let's get started. All right, you have what you need. Now, it's important to remember that we are not just our physical bodies. Our experiences are felt physically, but they're also felt psychologically with social and spiritual components as well. What affects us in one domain can influence our other domains of self, and compassion fatigue can show up in all of these areas. So compassion fatigue affects our biological, our psychological, social, and spiritual aspects of ourselves with signs and symptoms which can arise in each domain. So let's start with the biological aspect of self. If you are experiencing compassion fatigue, what can that feel like? Physical symptoms of compassion fatigue can feel like sleeplessness or excessive sleepiness, aches and pains, a feeling of emptiness, or a lack of energy. These symptoms are often the first indicator that something's wrong. From a psychological perspective, compassion fatigue can feel like hopelessness, overwhelm, feeling incompetent in your caring capabilities, or feeling dread towards working with certain people, or frequent feelings of anger or increased irritability. Socially, compassion fatigue can show up as withdrawing from oneself or others, taking a lot of days off of work, a difficulty separating personal life from work life, problems in personal relationships or with intimacy, or in an increased use of alcohol and other drugs to cope. And finally, from a spiritual lens, compassion fatigue can cause a sense of losing balance or disconnection from ourselves, a sense of failure, or a disrupt to our worldview. It is really important to note we are multidimensional beings with these biological, psychological, social, and spiritual aspects of ourselves, all of which can be impacted by compassion or empathy fatigue. Recognizing how compassion fatigue shows up for you is the first step towards taking action to shift your priorities and move towards a place of self-compassion. So let's take a look at your paper. Did you recognize any of these characteristics in yourself, or does someone you know maybe come to mind? Think about it. And if you feel comfortable, post your experience with this exercise down below. All right, everyone. My name is Caroline Williams, and I hope that you will join me in our third video where we discuss what places individuals at a higher risk for the development of compassion fatigue. Thanks.